mandala is symmetrical on four sides. This mandala is drawn on a 12-inch square of paper. Symmetrical on four sides is also quadrilateral symmetry. The easiest way to make a design symmetrical on four sides is to draw a fourth of the design on a 6-inch square like this. Then you trace the 6-inch square 4 times on a 12-inch square so that it fits together like this. First you'll need a 6-inch square of white paper like this and 1/4 of a color wheel to use for a template. Line the template up in the corner of the 6-inch square and trace it like this, and then mark where the sections of the color wheel are. Then take a ruler or another straight edge and line up each one of the marks with the corner of the square so that now you have 3 color wheel sections like this. Use this 1/4 of a color wheel to start your design and work your way to the other edges and to the opposite corner of the 6-inch square. Even if you're not making a picture of something, don't scribble. Make your lines clear with clearly defined spaces between the lines. You can use curved lines or angle lines or a combination and make the shapes overlap each other. You can also include symbols or pictures that stand for something. As we saw in the examples, mandalas were first started by Tibetan Buddhists who had all kinds of symbolism included in their mandalas. They weren't just a design to be pretty. They really meant something to the people. But some of the modern artists these days, they make mandala type designs, but those mandalas don't have any symbols in them. They're just nice to look at. And you don't have to always draw freehand. You can use rulers or other templates, shapes to trace to make your design too. Next, use a permanent marker to trace over your design. The reason for doing this is that the permanent marker will bleed through the paper so that you can see the design from both sides. And for what we're going to do next, you're going to need to be able to see the design from both sides of the paper. The more carefully and neatly you draw these things, the better your finished product is going to be. So take your time. Okay, now that I'm finishing tracing the design, I'll turn it over and you can see what I mean. See it blend through the paper so you can see it from both sides. Then you'll need another 6-inch square. It doesn't matter if one side's been drawn on because it's just going to be used for tracing. Now set this design aside and take your other 6-inch square and use a dark colored crayon or even an oil pastel to color over the whole one side of the square. It's going to work out better if you use dark colors like black, brown, dark green, blue, purple. Any of those colors would work. If you're using crayon, you want to color as thickly as possible. With oil pastels, you're not going to have to press as hard to go over it as much because they come off a lot easier. And so this is what it's going to look like, your second square. So you have 2 squares, one with a design and one with crayon on one side. Then take your 12-inch square and fold it in half, and then fold it in half again. You're doing this so that you can find the center point of the square because you're going to need to be able to line up the other 2 squares with a center point to make it work. Then take your square that has the crayon on one side and lay it crayon side down in 1/4 of the 12-inch square. Make sure that you line up the edges of the square with the folds that go into the middle. Don't worry too much about the outer edges. And then take your design and line that up with the folds that go into the middle and make sure the wheel is right into the middle of the square, like that. Then take a hard tip drawing instrument like a ballpoint pen, something that won't break when you push down on it, and holding your design in place firmly, carefully trace over all of the lines and see that's what it's supposed to look like when it transfers. Now you want to hold it down and you don't want to completely remove it until you know everything's been traced. So as you're going along, you're going to be lifting up a corner here and a corner there just to check to see if there's something else that you need to be tracing that you didn't trace. See, I've got quite a bit more to go over there. You can see where it's been transferred though. Okay, now I see that I've got the whole thing transferred, so now I can go to the next quarter of my 12-inch square. First, slide the 6-inch square over to the next quarter of the 12-inch square and line it up with the folds into the center. And then take the design and turn it like the page of a book. And make sure that the lines match up in the middle where the color wheel is and the other lines of the design. That's the most important thing, that it matches up that way. And once you get it matched up exactly the way it needs to be, then trace firmly over the lines again, checking and making sure before you take it all the way off. Okay, now I have everything traced that I need to for that square. So now I go to the next quarter of the square and I just move my crayon piece of paper over and line it up in the center again. And see, this is how this was before. So now I turn it like the page of a book and I make sure that the lines are matched up. Now that's what you always need to look for to be sure that you're doing it right. If the lines match up in the center, then you're tracing it right. If they don't, then there's something you need to change. Then you trace over it a third time. Okay, there, I've traced over it a third time. I just have 1/4 to go. So you repeat the process again. You take your crayon side and you slide it over and make sure that it's underneath the design. And having turned your design square like a book, you have it matching up again in the middle. And then you trace over it one more time. Okay, my design is completely traced. I have one more thing I need to add. If you look at the color wheel, I have 4 small sections and 4 big sections, and they should all be the same size. So now I take my ruler and I'm going to divide the ones that are bigger into 2 sections each. And I can do this real easily by using the fold of the paper to show me exactly where that needs to be lined up, and then just draw my line, and that divides my shapes. Then I can do it vertically the same way by using the fold of the paper, and now I have a color wheel with all 12 sections in it that it needs to have. The next thing I'm going to do is take a black permanent marker and I'm going to trace all of the lines very carefully, like this. And be sure to take your time. You don't want to get sloppy because these mistakes will really show up if you do. And here is my finished design that I've traced. Now all I have to do is color it or paint it, and it'll be finished.